The voice trembled on the other end of the line. Ricardo stopped in the empty hotel hallway, pretending to adjust his watch while unintentionally listening to the conversation that leaked from the storage room. It was a woman crying softly, trying to control her sobs so she wouldn't be heard. "Mom, I don't know what else to do anymore," she said through tears. "They won't stop humiliating me. Today the supervisor called me out in front of everyone, said I was incompetent, that anyone off the street could do my job better." Ricardo felt something tighten in his chest. He was the owner of that luxury hotel, but no one there knew it. Over the past 3 days, he had checked in as an ordinary guest, using a false name, paying like any other client. He wanted to see with his own eyes how his business operated far from the polished reports that reached his desk. Up until that moment, he had noticed small flaws. Cold service. Forced smiles. Nothing serious. But that breaking voice on the phone was different. That was real pain. "Hold on a little longer, my daughter," replied the tired voice on the other end. "You need this job. We need it." "I know, Mom. But it's every day. Every single day someone yells at me, treats me like I'm nothing. Today the manager said that if I didn't improve, there were 10 people in line waiting for my position." Ricardo discreetly leaned against the wall. The woman inside the room continued. "I clean everything properly, Mom. I swear to God I clean. But when something goes wrong, even if it's not my fault, the blame always falls on me. Always. Because I'm new, because I'm black, because I don't have anyone to defend me." The words cut like a razor. Ricardo had built that hotel from scratch. He was proud of having created jobs, of offering luxury to guests. But he had never stopped to truly listen to the people who kept that place running. "Stay strong, my daughter. God will reward you." "I'm trying, Mom. But sometimes I go into the bathroom just to cry in secret. I can't take pretending everything is fine anymore." The call ended. Ricardo heard footsteps approaching the door. Quickly, he walked as if he were just passing through the hallway. The door opened and a young black woman, in an impeccable uniform, came out wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She saw him and immediately lowered her head, quickening her pace in the opposite direction. But Ricardo had seen it. He saw the red eyes. He saw the fear stamped on her face. He saw someone who carried an invisible weight every single day. In the days that followed, he began to pay attention. And the more he observed, the more disgusted he felt. The supervisor treated that woman like trash. She spoke loudly, pointed fingers, made a point of humiliating her in front of coworkers and guests. The manager pretended not to see, but clearly tolerated all of it. Ricardo saw the young woman cleaning rooms in record time. He saw her carrying too much weight alone. He saw her being blamed for a towel another employee had forgotten. He saw her lower her head and apologize for things she didn't do. And no one defended her. No one. He discovered her name by discreetly reading the badge that swayed on her uniform. Clarice. 22 years old. 3 months on the job. And already completely destroyed on the inside. One morning, Ricardo was having breakfast in the hotel restaurant when he saw the scene that would change everything. Clarice walked by carrying an enormous pile of sheets. She tripped because of the weight, and some fell to the floor. The supervisor appeared out of nowhere like a vulture. "Incompetent. You're good for nothing." Clarice quickly knelt down, gathering everything with trembling hands, murmuring apologies. Some people in the restaurant looked. Some laughed. Most ignored it, returning to their expensive meals. Ricardo put down his fork. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of his own business. That night, locked in his room, he picked up the phone and made a call to his lawyer. Then he called the director of human resources. He didn't reveal where he was. He simply gave precise instructions. Very precise. Because Ricardo had understood something fundamental. He wasn't the owner of just a beautiful building. He was responsible for every life that worked there. And if that place was destroying people, he needed to act. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Now, what Ricardo would do next would change everything in that hotel forever. The next morning, Ricardo decided to observe more closely. He positioned himself strategically in the lobby, pretending to read the newspaper while keeping his eyes attentive to the service corridors. It didn't take long for the supervisor to appear. Her name was Patricia, he discovered after hearing another employee call her that. She was around 40 years old, hair pulled into a tight bun, with a permanently irritated expression. Patricia walked through the hotel like a general inspecting defeated troops. She stopped in front of each employee, pointed out invisible flaws, spoke in a tone that mixed contempt and threat. But Ricardo noticed something disturbing. She reserved the worst treatment specifically for Clarice. Late again. Patricia practically spat the words when Clarice appeared in the corridor, panting as if she had run. I don't care if the bus was late. That's your problem. There are competent people here waiting for your position. Clarice only nodded, eyes on the floor. Ricardo saw her hands tremble as she grabbed the cleaning cart. There was something wrong there. Something far beyond a demanding supervisor. Later, Ricardo accidentally passed by the cleaning supply room at the moment Patricia was mistreating Clarice again. This time, the accusation was about towels that were supposedly badly folded in room 304. Stupid. Is this how your mother taught you to work? Oh right, I forgot, people like you learn everything wrong anyway. Ricardo felt his blood boil. People like you. The words echoed in his mind. That wasn't just abuse of power. It was blatant racism, disguised as professional scolding. Clarice bit her lower lip so hard that Ricardo feared it would bleed. She didn't respond. She just picked up the towels and left. But when she passed by Ricardo, he saw a silent tear run down her face. That afternoon, Ricardo decided to investigate Patricia. He casually talked to other employees, pretending to be just a curious guest. He discovered things that disgusted him. Patricia was known for targeting black employees. She had already managed to get 3 fired in the past few months, always with technical excuses that no one questioned. She's untouchable, an older housekeeper whispered to Ricardo during a conversation in the service corridor. The manager is her cousin. They protect each other. We just lower our heads and pray we're not the next. Ricardo felt nauseous. How was that happening right under his nose? How had he been so blind? The next day, he witnessed the scene that almost made him reveal his identity right then and there. Clarice was cleaning the hallway on the 8th floor when a rich guest, irritated because his coffee was delayed, deliberately threw the cup on the floor in front of her. Clean it, he ordered with disdain. Clarice immediately knelt down, picking up the porcelain shards with her bare hands. A piece cut her finger. Blood dripped onto the beige carpet. The guest laughed. Ricardo took 2 steps toward them, fists clenched. But he stopped. If he intervened now, he would lose the chance to see how far that rot went. He needed the full picture. Even if that meant watching that young woman suffer a little longer. That decision would torment him for days. Patricia appeared minutes later, saw the blood on the carpet, and exploded. Incompetent. You dirted the carpet. Do you know how much it costs to clean this? But I cut my finger, Shut up. I don't want excuses. You're going to pay for the cleaning out of your salary. Clarice turned pale. Ricardo knew she earned minimum wage. Deducting any amount would be devastating. But she just wrapped her finger in a napkin and went back to work, leaving red trails as she cleaned. That night, Ricardo couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling of his room, thinking about Clarice's mother, about the conversation he had overheard. Stay strong, my daughter. How many mothers said that every day? How many daughters endured the unbearable because they had no choice? He picked up his laptop and began reviewing all the dismissal processes from the past 6 months. Clear patterns emerged. Black employees lasted less. They were punished more. They received fewer chances. And everything was documented in a way that seemed legal, technical, justifiable. But Ricardo saw the truth behind the numbers. He saw Patricia and people like her turning his hotel into a place of torture for those who didn't fit the profile they approved of. The next morning, something worse happened. Clarice was called into the manager's office. Ricardo managed to stay close enough to hear. Patricia accused Clarice of stealing cleaning products. A blatant lie, but said with such conviction that the manager seemed to believe it. We're going to have to suspend you while we investigate, the manager said with false concern. You understand, right? It's protocol. Clarice tried to defend herself, but her voice came out weak, without strength. I never stole anything. Please, I need this job. My mother is sick, Decision made. Gather your things. Ricardo watched Clarice leave that room like a ghost. He saw her walk to the locker room, grab her old bag, and leave the hotel with her shoulders slumped, defeated. On the sidewalk she stopped, looked back one last time, and broke down in tears. There, in that moment, Ricardo made his final decision. Enough observing. Enough gathering evidence. It was time to act. And when he acted, no one in that hotel would have any doubt about who was in charge. Ricardo locked himself in the room and made the first call. On the other end, his lawyer answered on the second ring. I need everything on Patricia Mendez and Fernanda Costa. I want contracts, history of archived complaints, covered-up labor lawsuits, everything. And I want it by tomorrow morning. While he waited, Ricardo began his own investigation. Pretending to be a bored guest, he started talking to employees during their breaks. He offered coffee, cigarettes, listened to stories. And the more he listened, the more his anger grew. A security guard said he had seen Patricia falsify reports. A housekeeper revealed that Fernanda, the manager, received kickbacks from suppliers to look the other way on irregularities. Another employee mentioned that Clarice was not the first victim, just the most recent. There was a guy last year, a cook said with tear-filled eyes. Good kid, hard-working. Patricia made up that he was messing with guests' belongings. The police were called. He was humiliated in front of everyone. Later they found out it was nothing, but it was too late. He tried to kill himself, sir. He survived, but he was never the same again. Ricardo felt his stomach churn. That wasn't just workplace abuse. It was the destruction of lives. And it was happening in his name, with his money, under his brand. That night, the documents arrived. Ricardo spent hours reading. He discovered that Patricia had 8 formal complaints filed in Human Resources, all ignored. Fernanda had siphoned off nearly $50,000 in inflated contracts. And the worst part, they weren't the only ones. An entire network of supervisors and managers operated like that, protecting one another. But there was something else in the documents. A name Ricardo hadn't expected to see. Clarice had filed a complaint 3 weeks earlier. A formal complaint about racial discrimination. The document had been received, registered, and then buried. Someone made sure it never reached him. Ricardo closed the laptop so hard he almost broke the screen. They didn't just abuse employees. They actively sabotaged any attempt at justice. The next morning, Ricardo did something risky. He obtained Clarice's address through internal records and went there. It was a poor neighborhood, houses pressed tightly together, streets full of potholes. Her house was small, paint peeling, but impeccably clean. He knocked on the door. A gray-haired woman answered, suspicious. Good morning. Are you Clarice's mother? Who wants to know? My name is Ricardo. I work at the hotel. May I speak with her? The mother hesitated, then invited him in. Clarice appeared with swollen eyes, an exhausted face. When she saw Ricardo, her hotel guest, she looked confused and frightened. What do you want? I need to talk to you. About what happened. Clarice stepped back. Please, don't complicate my life anymore. I just want to forget that place. Listen, Ricardo said softly, urgently. I know you filed a complaint. I know it was ignored. I know Patricia lied about the theft. And I know much more than you imagine. Tears welled up in Clarice's eyes. So what? You're just a guest. You can't do anything. Nobody can. People like me don't win against people like them. Ricardo wanted to reveal everything right then and there. But he knew he had to do it differently. He needed her to trust him, not because of who he was, but because of what he would do. Give me 1 day. Just 1 day. And I promise you'll get your justice. Clarice let out a bitter laugh. Justice. That word doesn't exist for my kind of people. Ricardo left a card with just a phone number on it. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Call this number. Please. He left before she could refuse. On the way back to the hotel, he made more calls. He summoned the administrative board for an emergency meeting. Activated an external audit. Contacted labor lawyers. Prepared documents for immediate termination. But there was one last step. The most important one. Back at the hotel, Ricardo asked to check out. Packed his things, handed over the keys, and left like any normal guest. The receptionist didn't even look up. From the parking lot, he sent an email to all hotel employees. Subject: mandatory meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m., main hall. Attendance required. Then he called his driver. Tomorrow, 8:30. You're going to pick someone up at this address. Treat her like a queen. And bring her to the hotel. The main hall was packed at 9 in the morning. All the hotel employees were there, confused, whispering among themselves. Patricia was in the corner with Fernanda, both looking irritated by the unexpected summons. Who's the idiot who scheduled a meeting without informing management? Patricia grumbled loudly enough for everyone to hear. At that moment, the main door opened. Clarice walked in, visibly uncomfortable, looking around like a cornered animal. She wore simple clothes, but she was clean, dignified. When Patricia saw her, her face turned red with rage. What is this slut doing here? Security! Get her out of here right now. But before anyone moved, another door opened. Ricardo entered, but different. Impeccable suit, upright posture, serious expression. Behind him, 3 lawyers and 2 auditors. The hall fell instantly silent. Fernanda stepped forward, confused. Excuse me, sir, but you can't come in here right now. We're having an internal meeting. I know. I'm the one who called it. Patricia rolled her eyes. Look, I don't know who you think you are, but my name is Ricardo Almeida. I am the owner of this hotel. The silence that fell over the hall was deafening. Fernanda turned pale. Patricia opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. Clarice, in the back, widened her eyes in absolute shock. For the last 6 days, Ricardo continued, his firm voice echoing through the hall, I stayed here anonymously. I wanted to see how my hotel really works when no one knows the owner is watching. He began to walk slowly across the hall, looking at the employees. And do you know what I discovered? I discovered that this place, which should be synonymous with excellence and respect, has become a torture ground for honest people. I discovered that we have supervisors who systematically abuse their power. I discovered that we have managers who cover up crimes and siphon off money. Fernanda stepped forward, her voice trembling. Mr. Almeida, I can explain. Shut up. The words came out cold. You had years to explain. You had dozens of opportunities to do the right thing. You chose to protect your cousin instead of protecting innocent employees. He turned to Patricia. And you. You are the worst kind of person. You use your position to destroy lives. You forge documents. You persecute people because of the color of their skin. You lied, humiliated, and psychologically tortured employees who only wanted to work with dignity. Patricia tried to speak, but Ricardo raised his hand. I have recordings. I have testimonies. I have documents proving every false accusation you made. I have proof of the money siphoned off by your cousin. I have everything. He gestured to the lawyers, who began handing envelopes to Patricia and Fernanda. You are fired for cause. You will face labor lawsuits for moral harassment. You will face criminal charges for defamation and false accusation. And Fernanda, you will also face charges for embezzlement. Fernanda collapsed into a chair, crying. Patricia, however, exploded. You can't do this. I've worked here for 15 years. I know important people. I'll sue you for what? For firing someone who destroyed lives. Ricardo took a step toward her. Do you remember the young man from last year? The one you falsely accused and who tried to take his own life? Patricia turned pale. He was here this morning. He gave a full statement to my lawyers. With medical reports. With hospital records. You will pay for that too. Ricardo turned to the rest of the employees, who were watching everything in absolute silence. I failed you. I built this place, but I didn't build protection for those who truly keep it running. I allowed cruel people to take control. And for that, I apologize. He looked directly at Clarice, tears streaming down her face. Clarice, you filed a formal complaint 3 weeks ago. About racial discrimination, about moral harassment. That complaint was deliberately buried. It never reached me. But it has reached me now. He walked toward her. The entire hall watched. You were fired yesterday under a false accusation of theft. An accusation we proved to be completely fabricated. You were humiliated, psychologically tortured, discriminated against because of the color of your skin. And none of that should have happened. Ricardo extended his hand. I would like to offer you your job back. But not as a housekeeper. As supervisor of the lodging department. With a salary 3 times higher. With full authority to implement changes that protect employees from people like Patricia. Clarice looked at the outstretched hand, then at Ricardo, then at the entire hall. Her legs were shaking. I don't understand. You deserve it. You always did. And it's time for someone to recognize that. Clarice took his hand. And when she did, it wasn't just a work agreement. It was the promise that things could change. That justice could exist. That silenced voices could finally be heard. The hall erupted in applause. 3 months later, Ricardo was standing in the same corridor where everything had begun. But now it was different. The heavy silence had been replaced by calm voices, occasional laughter, an environment where people breathed without fear. Clarice walked past him carrying a clipboard, checking rooms with an efficiency that impressed him. She no longer lowered her head. She looked people in the eyes. She smiled. She had even gained a little weight. Her face was no longer hollowed out by constant tension. Good morning, Mr. Almeida, she greeted him naturally. Good morning, Clarice. How are things? Good. We had 2 complaints yesterday, but we resolved them quickly. And no employee was humiliated in the process. Ricardo smiled. Good work. After Clarice left, Ricardo found himself thinking about how much things had changed. It hadn't been easy. Firing Patricia and Fernanda was only the beginning. He discovered that the rot was deeper than he had imagined. 3 other supervisors were removed. 2 managers resigned before they could be investigated. But the hardest part wasn't cleaning up the mess. It was rebuilding trust. Employees who had spent years living in fear don't open up overnight. It took weeks of meetings, one-on-one conversations, new policies written and implemented, for people to begin believing that the change was real. Ricardo created an anonymous reporting channel that went straight to him. He implemented mandatory training on discrimination and harassment. He raised salaries. He hired a psychologist to provide free support to employees. And most importantly, he began showing up at the hotel regularly, talking to the people who worked there, truly listening. Clarice's mother visited the hotel a week after the meeting. Ricardo received her personally. She cried, held his hands tightly, and repeated a sentence he would never forget, "Thank you for seeing my daughter." Seeing. That word echoed in Ricardo's mind for days. How many people had he not seen? How many silent cries had he ignored while looking only at numbers on spreadsheets? One day, a longtime employee came to speak with him. It was the security guard who had told him about Patricia's schemes. "Mr. Almeida, I wanted to say something." "Of course. Go ahead." The man took a deep breath. "I knew everything. I knew what was happening to Clarice, to the others. And I did nothing. I stayed quiet because I was afraid of losing my job. I know that doesn't justify me, but I wanted to apologize. To her and to you." Ricardo placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not the only one who needs to apologize. I failed too. The difference is that now we can do things differently." The guard nodded, eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Now we can." Ricardo realized something important during those months. Real change doesn't happen with a beautiful speech or a spectacular firing. It happens every day in small choices, in difficult conversations, in looking to the side and asking, "Are you okay?" and truly wanting to hear the answer. Clarice became one of the most respected supervisors in the hotel. Employees who were once afraid to speak now came to her with problems, suggestions, and outbursts. She created a system where housekeepers worked in pairs, no one was overloaded, and everyone had the right to decent breaks. One day, Ricardo saw her talking to a new employee who looked nervous. Clarice held the girl's shoulders gently, speaking softly, smiling. The girl visibly relaxed. Later, Ricardo asked what she had said. I told her she was allowed to make mistakes. That everyone makes mistakes at the beginning. And that no one here would humiliate her for that. Ricardo felt a lump in his throat. Who taught you to lead like this? Clarice looked at him with a calm sadness in her eyes. No one. I just do the opposite of what they did to me. Those words stayed with Ricardo. He began sharing the story in lectures, without revealing names, talking about how he almost destroyed lives through negligence. About how owning something also means being responsible for the people who work in it. Many people didn't like it. They called him exaggerated, left-wing, said he was destroying managerial authority. But Ricardo didn't care. Because every night, when he closed his eyes, he no longer heard that voice crying on the phone. Now he heard laughter in the corridors. He heard people talking without fear. He heard the sound of a place where human beings were treated like human beings. And that, Ricardo learned, was worth more than any profit on a spreadsheet. If you made it this far, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. Leave a comment saying what you thought of this story and which city or country you're watching from. Your interaction helps this content reach more people. And remember, every time you see someone being humiliated, silenced, treated as if they don't matter, you have a choice. You can pretend you didn't see it, or you can make a difference. Just like Ricardo did. Just like you can too.